You should put that in the podcast.
What, the crack point?
Uh-huh.
We should put that in the podcast. Okay. That camera looks a little crooked, but okay. You set? 3, 2, and 1. And welcome to our podcast. How
Hello.
you doing? I'm Damien
Good.
Mel.
I'm Mia Mel.
And we are both co-founders of Modern Wholesale Property Management.
Yes.
What's going on? Today we were at the Reimagine show in Anaheim for the California
car show.
California Association of Realtors. And it was actually really, really busy.
Yeah, there was a decent amount of people there.
Yeah, we were busy nonstop. Our booth was busy nonstop. A lot of talking, engaging, explaining.
Yes, agents seemed to really like it. I
Yeah.
think we got good response. Next time we bring alcohol, though, that'll definitely be better.
No, I know. Then we can get people to just stay around our booth.
I mean, those agents are like flies to candy. I mean, our candy went in like 20 minutes. A whole
know.
Costco bag.
It was fast.
That was just supposed to be decor.
Yeah, sorry. I might have had some.
But, yeah.
So,
Next time.
all right, Mia. So we left off. So I think this is like episode I think this is episode 9 we're doing. Is this 9? 9, episode 9? Sound guy saying yes.
Probably get that situated before we start.
So, yeah. Well,
And part 3
part 3
of the Who the Hell Are We series.
Yes. So as we last
Only
episode we made it up through the right to the point where the housing market was good. Now it's crashed 08.
Yes.
So the housing market has crashed. And do you want to talk about that a little bit and what we did through the crash? Because I think it's a little bit of what I think we see some similarities today, just different, but yet some familiar points.
We're getting 08 vibes.
I'm definitely getting 08 vibes. I'm hearing a lot of, here's what I'm hearing a lot of. Well, when the interest rates come back down, we're going to just have a snap back in the market.
Right.
Sounds like 08 to me.
I did read today somewhere that California Association of Realtors is projecting that next year sales are going to skyrocket and we're going to be out of the slump. But we all know from 2008, they were big fat liars.
Yes.
And they said that the market was going to be sound and stable. And that was like right before the big crash.
Well, then they admitted.
Didn't the guy like have to quit or resign?
Then they admitted, the president or CEO or whatever it is of the association admitted that he actually lied and was pressured to lie because they think if you lie that will make people go out and buy homes and do things and it'll stimulate the economy.
Like the theory that people will say, will do what you say, basically. It's kind of like when we were doing candles and we told people that this was our bestseller, and because that's what we said was our bestseller, people bought it and it became the bestseller.
Correct. Yeah, that's
like
common.
You manifest.
So this is where
maybe they're just manifesting.
I know, and I know you had even talked to a mortgage.
Oh yeah,
direct lender.
I was talking to Rocket Mortgage guy today, mainly because they had a bar in their booth.
Yes, and they also were like, "Oh yeah, when the rates come down next year, we're going to be solid." And so here's what I put out to every agent or anybody who thinks that the rates are going to come down. Why? This is the question. Why? Right? So we know that this is what we do know. We know that the Fed dictates what the borrowing overnight discount rate is for the banks. That in turn is what sets the rate in the market. The 30-year mortgage is based off a 10-year treasury note because, and if you don't know this, the average homeowner, well, not now, but the average homeowner only lives in their home 7 years before selling, and therefore the investors paid off. So investors look at the 10-year rate of treasury when they look at a 30-year mortgage. To them, it's the same type of investment. They're going to get paid back within that 10-year period, right? So the Fed is largely involved in what the rates are going to be. And that dictates how the market moves. Now, everyone says, well, the Fed is going to lower rates. Okay, well, today they said they're going to raise rates one more time this year. They said there's one more rate hike coming that will make 12 rate hikes, 12 since 2022. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. If the federal government really, really wanted to stimulate the economy, wouldn't they take the number one thing that affects everybody, gas, and drive the price down? Today I paid $6.37 a gallon for gas. That is absolutely ridiculous. And you'll say, well, okay, they don't have anything to do with gas. Well, actually they do, and here's why. The feds give out permits to oil companies and they allow them to drill on U.S.-owned land. They have stopped doing that during this administration. So we went from one being completely Yeah, we were oil. We were oil.
Energy independent.
We were energy independent. We were energy independent. We were not having a need to buy any foreign oil. And we went right back to that because immediately this administration canceled the pipeline. They canceled leases. They reduced what drillers can drill and immediately choked off the supply of oil, and that shot gas straight up. So if the feds really, really cared and wanted to bring the rates down, wouldn't they do it at the gas pump? Wouldn't that be the first place? But they don't. So next time you tell yourself that, hey, rates are just going to bounce back, ask yourself, why are they going to bounce back? And just because they say it on the news, don't make it so. So I think the better thing to do is learn from history, learn where we've come from.
Yeah.
If you were in the market in 2008, what similarities do you see? We see similarities today in the way that the rhetoric is out there and what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But the second thing is, if you weren't in the market, learn from it. If you're young and you say, hey, 2008, I was still in junior high, great. Well, learn from what we did, what we learned from, and how to move your business forward in that type of economic, depression.
But aren't you supposed to just date the rate?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You don't hear people saying that all the time.
Date the rate? Oh, because it's sign of the times? I don't understand. What do you mean date the rate?
Yeah, they say date the rate. So it's okay that the rates, so basically marry the house, but date the rate. Meaning.
Oh, because you're going to refinance.
Yeah.
Okay, but what
Literally
happens?
everyone says that.
Okay,
nonstop.
so here's a question. So you go ahead and you're going to marry the house, as you say. You're going to date the
rate because you're going to
7.5
refinance
and you're going to refinance
next year or whatever.
You're going to refinance next year at 13%.
Yeah, so basically, don't worry about the 7.2
but what
30-year fixed rate.
What if next year the rate's 13%?
Then you have to.
So
you have to be engaged to your rate.
So lesson number 1: don't date the rate. They did that in 2006 and 2007, and here's where they did that. Ninja loans.
Adjustable.
They said, don't worry about that adjustable rate that's going to happen in 4 years because you can just refinance.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you could refinance. Unfortunately, you had to put a lot of cash down. You were upside down, and the rate was completely higher if you did not.
And if you didn't time it just right,
you
could miss the market.
So the dating was catastrophic in 2008 over that same theory. Oh, don't worry about the rate today. You're going to get a new rate tomorrow.
The rate ended up being a psycho.
No, but a lot of consumers were smart and they locked in at a 3.5. We talked to some guy when we were on vacation. He was locked in at 1.5% on a 20-year, which is amazing. So a lot of consumers were smart and they locked in, but that's bad for you real estate agents because they don't want to sell now because the rate is unattractive.
That's part of the problem.
And traditionally, when the rate goes up, the house price goes down, right? Because in a traditional market. And we're not in a traditional market right now. We're in a post-pandemic, new pandemic starting, overhead cold, I don't know. But bottom line is, in a traditional market, the home is sold on what you can afford on a monthly payment, right? And it's just like a car. It's like, what can you afford to pay? It's never the whole balance. It's just what your monthly payment is. So when the interest rate was higher, that meant the equity portion of the home had to be suppressed in order to make that piece fit, right? So if a consumer can only pay $3,500 a month on a house and the interest rate was low, that left plenty of room of equity for the seller, and therefore that's how home prices increase. When the rate goes up, the valuation of the home goes down, and that is a typical market. We don't have this market right now. We have elevated home prices, but the reason we have
very low inventory.
And we have that very low inventory because nobody wants to sell. People want to buy. 20% are foreign buyers. People taking their money out of China, for example, and bringing it into a U.S. economy. So there is definitely some unique things that are happening in the market. And so I think you can't just simply say, date the rate. I just think that's a crazy thought process.
I mean,
that's
it's
speculation.
It's a very positive outlook.
Yeah, exactly. So when 2008 hit, our market crashed. We were no longer selling. We were no longer doing loans. Our funding department completely went away. We literally rolled up shop and that was over. We were done. And then if you're familiar with after 2008, by around 2010, the Frank Dodd Act happened, and then you need to have an MLS because they realized there were so many consumers ripped off by lenders that there need to be special oversight. So we kind of exited that market.
Yeah. Well, I think too, so the problem with real estate agents and taking advice from them is there's such a conflict of interest. It's like you can't, of course you're going to say date the rate because they want you to buy a house. If they tell you that
I feel like we're saying date the rape.
No, date the rate.
I know, but that's how it sounds.
Do you know what I mean though? Like when you listen to your real estate, and I'm a real estate broker, but I also do a lot of other things. So, if you don't sell your house, like the beauty of kind of diversifying your business is it's not such a obvious conflict of interest. Of course, your real estate broker agent is going to say, oh yeah, it's 7.5, it's no big deal because you can refinance next year. Well, the truth is he does not know that. He has no idea what he's talking
Correct.
about. That's just words coming out of his mouth. And you have to take it with a grain of salt, because why is he saying this? Because he wants you to buy the house, because that's how he makes his money. So it's not really necessarily a good resource. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and I get like you're that we're all in sales. You're going, if the client wants to believe that, you want the client to believe that, because at the end of the day, you want to make a sale. I mean, who are we kidding? This is what we do, right? Like if I'm selling cars, guy comes in, he really can't afford a $180,000 car, but he sure wants to do it and he wants to put his money down. I want to make the sale. In my mind, I'm thinking, it's not really my problem. I want to make the sale. So sales, unfortunately, and Mia, you know this, because Mia, you like to close the deal. We do what we have to do. So it's a fine line of, I don't know any better. I'm just giving you industry information. But what we're proposing is, we're not saying try to kill your deals, right? We're not saying don't get your client into a house. If they're comfortable with that, that's fine. We're not saying you need to sit your client down and slap them in the face 14 times and say, what the hell are you thinking? No. What we're saying is, you as the agent, the broker, the business owner, we're saying you need to be thinking long term, right? Your business is way beyond just that one transaction, right? And so you need to be thinking about.
And you want a long-term relationship. I mean, that client that you said date the rate to, who next year is planning to refi and rates are 10, they're going to be looking at you like, what did you get me into?
Okay, so let's go over this. So 2008 hit, and where we saw opportunity, one is we immediately had a pivot. We had to pivot our business, and we saw opportunity right away. As foreclosures were starting to take place, and many of the properties that we managed were being foreclosed on, and tenants were coming in saying they had 3-day notices to vacate, was definitely a tough scene. We started realizing, how are we going to adapt to this market? And so a couple things happened. One is, when a foreclosure happens, it completely wipes out the lease. It wipes out the lease, and the tenant has to leave.
Well, it used to.
It used to.
It's not anymore.
So the Tenant in Place Act prevented that.
Yeah.
So Congress realized that they were displacing, millions of Americans, because investors and junior investors and everybody who read a book that they bought offline, or watched a TV, sales pitch at 3 a.m. were buying homes with no money down on ninja loans. And so they were quickly losing these homes. And so the tenants were being displaced. So Congress enabled the TIP, Tenant in Place program, and basically said, if the home is foreclosed on and it goes back to the bank as an REO or even bought by an investor at the auction steps, they have to honor the tenant lease if the tenant can provide a valid lease,
right,
and show that they have been making payments to a landlord. And of course, there's a ton of fraud in that. There's a ton of fraud in that scenario. But what that did was that immediately made Fannie Mae overnight the largest landlord in the United States, because Fannie Mae was basically inheriting all these properties that the banks were foreclosing on, because they were the insurance behind it, per se.
That was a fun time to be a property manager.
It was crazy time. It was a crazy time.
You were getting like 50 properties a day.
A
like,
day.
No joke.
A day.
Like, the email would just be like, ding, ding, ding.
We had to.
That meant you got a new property.
I was inventorying properties for Fannie Mae in Compton, trap houses. I'm having to pound on doors. There was a bunch of girls inside, and their IDs were held by the guy in the Escalade driving around the block. There were some crazy times. There was definitely some crazy things. So, but what we saw was our niche in. We were like, how do we get into this Fannie Mae deal? How do we get in this Fannie Mae deal? And so we quickly started working with people that were working with Fannie Mae.
Well, the ideal person to be at that time was an REO agent,
which we were not.
So we weren't REO agents. So it's kind of like, I think, our story where we talked about property management. We wanted to be loan or we wanted to be agents or lenders, but we couldn't do that. So we went the property management route. Same thing with Fannie Mae. We wanted to be in the REO agent, but again, everyone and their grandma was an REO agent. So we went in the property management, side door.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because Fannie Mae pitted the agent against the property manager in the REO scenario. So basically, whoever could get to the property first won.
Well,
Well, whoever could get to the
Yes.
property and kind of talk the tenant into whatever they wanted them to do. So if the agent
Yes.
got there first and said, hey, leave, I'll give you cash for keys.
Correct.
Then he won because he could sell the house, list the house. If the property management company got there first and said, no, you can stay, I just need to make sure I collect the rent and get a signed lease, then we won.
Well, okay, so we were 24/7.
So it was pretty interesting.
We were 24/7, and we got to a lot of damn properties first. I remember at one point, I was talking to the staff about this. So we had, we didn't have a system to manage the influx of all these properties. I used to have 50 a day, and I remember we took yarn and we strung it across our offices, and we took clothespins, and what we did was, as we were getting the orders from the bank, we would print them out and we would literally pin them up like, wet t-shirts hanging to dry in the sun.
You're like an order in a restaurant or something.
Yeah, and we just had like hundreds of them, like lining they were like, you had to walk underneath them to get through it, but then we would go through and see which ones were in which areas so we could start organizing. So then different teams would be like, okay, we'll take these, but it was definitely...
If only there were computers back then.
No, man. But listen, you don't always have time. Here's the thing. You don't always have time to find a solution to streamline things. And when you're in a scenario like that, you don't want to find time for that. You're too busy. We were racing to get there before the
and I
REO
remember
agents.
the inefficiencies were crazy. Like the locks would get changed on the door like 10 times.
Yes, but different people, and every time we go back and there was no locks. And that happened too. So we did two things. So we were property managers for... we were property managers for Carrington, who had the Mississippi West contract for Fannie Mae, and then they subbed out to us. So we had that share, and we did all of Southern California. We did all the way up to Barstow. We were doing Barstow, Baker. We were doing up to Baker.
We were going far.
Bakersfield. So we were doing that. Then separately, we realized that there was construction work. So our construction company separately bid and became one of only 3 REO
sand
vendors in San Bernardino, Riverside County. And we excelled over the others because we found out there was one very unique thing that was not happening. So if you're an agent, you'll appreciate this. REO agents would go ahead and they would submit over to the sand vendor a property that needs to have estimate done on it. That estimate would go to Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae would approve or deny whatever they wanted done. And then it was up to us to get it done, but it was up to the REO agent to manage us. And then the REO agent was obviously going to list the property once it was done. So as you can imagine, the REO agent is very anxious to know what's going on with the property, and they want updates. And if you know anything about contractors, most contractors are small organizations, and they don't use email.
Communication is not their strong point.
Yeah, they don't use email. They don't answer
Especially
the phone.
back then.
They're in the field.
Yeah,
it's just very hard to get a hold of them. And so what we realized very early on was information was key in this transaction. And so the REO agent got to pick which SAM vendor they wanted to use. We started getting, no lie, we were also getting about 30 to 40 properties a day that needed estimates done on it.
And I don't even think we had iPhones back then.
No,
we had like Blackberries.
We had BlackBerry servers in our office, but we had people that were on the desk. They were on the repairs desk.
Which is crazy. Can you imagine operating today without being able to take pictures on your phone?
Yeah, it was. Well, what it was is, okay, so we had iPhones because iPhone came out in 2008. I distinctly remember this, but we would not let people put the iPhone on our network because it wasn't secure yet. We had a BlackBerry server, which was ultra secure. And it took probably about 2 years before we could integrate iPhones into our network. And then iPads obviously didn't come out until down the line. So, yeah, we didn't have the same ability to maneuver information around. But what we did was we said, listen, here's a schedule. Start calling the agents before they call you. Call them and tell them what's going on. Send them pictures of what's going on. We started doing that really, really quickly, and we became the favorite for them. So much so that Fannie Mae started using us unofficially in L.A., and so we were doing San Bernardino, Riverside, and LA County, huge territory. But it was crazy. It was a lot of work. And I just remember being on calls, national calls, where they were saying, we're putting appliances in. We would put them in for them, and then they're being stolen. And then we went to the San Bernardino SWAT meet. Like, I would never go to the San Bernardino SWAT meet, but we went to the San Bernardino SWAT meet, and we saw so many Fannie Mae Whirlpool appliances, lights,
well, the people
faucets.
who installed them were the ones that were stealing them. And then selling them, and then probably putting them back in like 2, 3, 4 times.
So there's a movie, if you haven't seen it, and actually Alfred told me this movie, 99 Homes. And it's basically about this time period. It's about all the scams and everything. Watch the movie. I honestly say this is probably one of the cleanest, truest like depictions of what happened from bank fraud to just everything within the process of people losing their homes. But anyways, I was gonna say is I see a lot of similarities today in our market, right? Like everything fell apart because of subprime loans and all these ninja loans, right? And so basically we built a house of cards. Poor Iceland took it, completely in the ass, and they went from a fishing country to a banking country to a tourist country. But today when I look and I read about what's going on with the banks, there's millions and millions and millions of home loans that were on forbearance for COVID.
Yeah, that still are.
They're
probably
not required to report that to the government. They're not in any of the rates. And so during COVID, they kept saying, well, we're historically low in foreclosures. Yeah, because all the homeowner I do is say COVID or sneeze into the phone, and they literally paused their entire.
Now, why do you think the government doesn't require COVID forbearances to be counted as far as loans that are on the verge of foreclosure or in that category?
Well, because then the government would have to admit that all their restrictive lockdowns and protocols they put in place actually had a negative consequences to our economic conditions, and they're not going to do that. Instead, they're going to say how great their economic policies are.
Well, or do you feel like they purposely want to keep those numbers in the shadows so the public is not aware of the actual situation of the economy?
That's what I just said.
Well, you were saying because they want to look good as far as our lockdowns, but
no.
I
didn't say they want to look good for as lockdowns. They want to look good in terms of the economy, and they're constantly touting
the economy to look good.
Yeah, they're constantly touting that the economy is doing well, and if they actually told the truth, which is hard to do in our government, and actually said this is what's happening and this is the true state of our economy, then people would know, right? So, okay, so today what do we have? We have an unknown amount of
A shadow market
of
pre-foreclosures.
So we have that. That's number one.
Well, loans that are probably 24 months past due.
Correct. Yeah. They're definitely far enough along to be foreclosed on. And traditionally speaking, when people are told they don't have to make their payment, they spend it. They just buy it. And actually that was very relevant because look at Amazon. They grew during the pandemic. They had a massive amount of surge in stuff, and it wasn't stuff to survive the pandemic. It was just junk, right? People just bought. They had all this extra money, partly from the government, partly from not making their mortgage payment, right? People were renovating their house. Home Depot did very, very well during the time. Where do people get this extra surge of cash? Because you weren't making
people
necessarily.
Are still getting that free money.
Yeah, there's a lot of free money. There's a lot of
care payments,
unemployment. Businesses are getting what's called an ERC. If you're not familiar with that, it's so-called free money from the government. I personally think it's dangerous. We can talk about that another time. But that's also there's also a shadow of businesses are going to close down, small businesses, because
they've been living off PPP.
They've been living off of free
ERC.
money. They've been living off free money, right? So if you're like, hey, this restaurant I go to, mom and pop, they weren't doing so well before COVID, then all of a sudden they expanded, they remodeled,
they redecorated.
Yeah, because it's government money. Oh, and the owner's got a Porsche. It's government money, right? So we have these dynamics happening. We have a poor labor market, a very, very poor labor market. And so if you're like, wait a minute, I found a job really easy. That's great. But let's explain what a good labor market looks like. A good, healthy labor market is we put a job up. I get 10 or 15 qualified applicants. Of those qualified applicants, I invite them to an interview. I would say 80 to 90% show up, which does not happen today. And of the people that show up, they not only are interviewing with me, but they have also found a good 3 or 4 other interviews with other companies, so they have a little bit of options to choose from. That is what we call a very well-balanced, smooth-running labor market. What we have today is nobody shows up. Nobody applies unless the word remote work is there. This is not sustainable. Companies have stopped hiring because they have given up out of frustration. Yeah. This is not a sustainable practice.
Yeah. Plus wages are kind
of
through
So
the roof.
Listen, you're hearing all this, and maybe you've never thought about all of this. And we're telling you this. Don't go, hey, the rates are going to come down tomorrow and the whole world's going to go back to, just roses. And it's not, there's so many dynamic things happening that we need to be looking at the whole market, right? And so I see a lot of parallels between that and what happened in 2008. Obviously, 2008 was different, but yet there was still a lot of things moving at the same time that all led to what we saw as a crash.
Right.
Right. And so for me, I'm preparing to say, hey, the market's going to continue to get worse. What is our business going to look like? Where do we need to pivot? Right. How do we need to make sure that we're still making money? We're still growing in a bad market.
Yeah. Well, diversification is helpful. I mean, honestly, every 10 to 15 years, you have like ups and downs, market cycles, right? So we're due for it anyway.
Well,
so
the economy is like a forest, right? And so in the forest,
got to burn down.
it's designed to burn down, right? So if a lightning strikes a tree and causes a fire, technically we're not supposed to put that out. That's nature's way of saying, hey, it's time to thin out the forest, right? But when the trees burn, the pine cones fall to the ground and the heat opens them up to generate new trees. And so the question is what is your pine cone? That's the question. What is your pine cone?
Yeah,
so,
can you withstand the ups and downs?
Yeah, don't latch onto the tree. What is your pine cone? What is going to be the next thing that's going to get you to the next level? And the awesome thing about this is because we are a country built on capitalism there is money to be made no matter what the economic conditions
in an
are.
Up or down market, there really is. Yeah,
there's still money. There's still houses. There's still transactions. It's just things change. Your buyer changes, right? People change in what they do, and if your business is fluctuated, right? And so I think that's where we're seeing the biggest parallels, right? So we went through the Fannie Mae days where we did the property management. I know at one point, I mean, we were just the amount of doors was crazy, and then we went through the. After the Fannie Mae days went over,
then the funds bought up everything.
The funds started buying. They started buying up all Fannie Mae's inventory, and
Treehouse, Waypoint, Invitation, Carrington.
We helped them. We helped them on their leasing side. We helped them on their construction side, and we literally had houses. Remember, we had houses that we cleaned up and sold REO for Fannie Mae. Same house.
Get back,
go in,
Invitation.
Rip it all out, and put all new kitchen in it and everything for like Invitation or for Waypoint. So it was like, hey, we've already been to this, and that happened so many times. Many times.
We've been around.
So those days were great. We did well. The downside
they were hard though, and they were so chaotic. And at the end of the day, they end up taking everything in house as far as management.
Correct. And here's the problem when you do something of bulk that comes really fast. Remember we talked about all the paper hanging on clotheslines. It takes a minute to get a process in place. They're changing their process, you're changing your process, and eventually you will stabilize and get a process. Well, the same went true for construction. Fannie Mae was operating at a level they had never operated before because the volume was never where they anticipated. And so by the time we finally got the process down and figured it out, we were done. So you don't make
it was all ramp.
It was all ramp, and here's the thing: you don't make your money in ramp. You make your money when you finally settle down.
And when you stabilize.
Amazon didn't make money for the first 20 years. It ramped, right? And then once you stabilize, then you have it figured out and you become efficient. So you don't.
And it was a lot of growing pains. Remember, we were there when Treehouse got their very first house.
Yeah, we were in their office in Corona.
Before they became Invitation Home, they didn't even have a phone system. They were operating off of one cell phone.
We're talking about when Waypoint started, they were Wheel and Bryant, and I remember going to their offices in Orange County, and they were using somebody else's office, and I called you on the phone and go, "Are you sure this isn't a scam? Because there's no company here called Wheel and Bryant."
Yeah,
but they were not. They were they were actually really cool guys. I did like the Waypoint guys. They were really cool.
And then, I just remember Invitation. I mean, they were working off Excel spreadsheets. Up until the last moment when we stopped working for them. But,
and it was bad.
And none of them knew the processes or the rules. And I just remember, they had 600 properties or more, and all over Southern California. And we were the management company. And they were working off Excel spreadsheets. And I just remember the kind of tipping point was they wanted us to give 3-day notices to every single property that did not pay rent on the first.
Correct, which was 85%.
And I was trying to explain to them, that's impossible because you have to post them. I would not be able, no one could post 600. We would be posting 600 notices every single month. It would take a whole month or more to even do that. It doesn't make sense. No one even pays on the first anyways. And now it's just weeks of going back and forth, and they just couldn't understand.
Well, I remember we went to their offices, and we met the now guy who he had taken over, and he was from Dallas. He was like a cowboy, and we sat down with him. We said, listen, one of our main concerns is you owe us like, I don't know, like $85,000. And he laughed and he said, there's no way in hell we owe you $85,000. And he kind of treated us like shit. Like we were like just some peasants. And he was right. He didn't owe us $85,000. He owed us like $94,000. When all said and done, he owed us $94,000, and they wouldn't pay us. And I remember you actually spoke but this is the best part. I wish I could record it. Mia spoke with the head of, he was in charge of Fannie Mae, and he reported directly to Ben Bernanke. And I remember you got his number.
Oh, I can't.
And I remember this as clear as day because our daughter was at DMV doing her driving test, and Mia's in the car on a cell phone, and she basically is ripping this guy a new one about how we're being screwed because we're not being paid, we're performing. And I remember he kept telling her to slow down because he was taking massive notes, and she was telling him everything that was wrong with the program and what they were doing wrong. And he was like, it was like an hour and a half conversation.
He had no idea.
No, he never heard of any of these issues because he was so elevated in this. It never got to him. But all I remember is we did that, and I think within 48 hours, we had a check overnighted to us from Carrington. They were like, "Oh, here you go. We're going to pay you right away." So,
but then I think they fired us.
No.
Do we still work for them?
No.
After that?
We terminated them. We told them we didn't want to work with them anymore, and we gave them all their keys back in a giant box. Yeah. So sometimes a large client is not good because you become their employee, and
you put too many eggs in one basket.
Well, then what happens is you're not focused on your business now. You're focused on their business, and their business.
Your business becomes so small compared to their business.
Yeah, and then what happens is they're eventually going to streamline you, and so like we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about people that are doing Zillow, not leads, but Zillow has this other program where basically they share in the revenue. And they're saying, I'm making so much money on this deal because Zillow is doing that. But I guarantee you, Zillow is going to eventually find a way to bring all of that in-house. Zillow does not want you making 85% of the commission. That's not enough for them. Zillow wants to make 100% of the commission. They're a big, giant public corporation. They're greedy. They want their money. They don't want you to make more than them. And so what you think you're doing and making all this money, that's great, but just know that they are working around the clock to figure out how to get you out of the picture and how can they capitalize on lead without you, right? And
exactly.
But you would do the same if you were a large company with a smaller person, right? That's just how business works. And so when you have these large clients, you don't want to get so tied up with them that you lose sight of what your business is. Yeah, I see you're telling me we're 32 minutes in. You're saying you're ready. Your wine glass is empty, so you're ready to stop talking?
No, I'm just trying to keep you on track.
You ought to see we have a dinner party at our house. 8:30, everybody's kicked out.
I know we didn't even scratch the surface, but I mean, there's just a lot.
No, there was a lot, and I think
it's
talking
better to keep them,
yeah.
wanting.
Well, I think some of our stuff in talking about your conversation with Rocket Mortgage and just what we saw today at the show.
Yeah, I mean the one
lights
thing,
a fire.
The one thing that I was surprised at. So we were at the car show. We did go to Rocket Mortgage because they had a their booth. I'm taking note of that because they had a line. And so the one guy was like, Rocket Mortgage. Well, basically, he said Rocket Mortgage is going from an online mortgage company to a brick and mortar. So that's why they were there. They're going to be face to face with the client. They're no longer going to just be call service. You're talking to some 18-year-old trying to refinance or get a mortgage, which is really annoying, or do it on an app. So they're kind of going against the grain, right? Which is interesting in this market. And basically, he was like, "We're so big, we could never fail. That's impossible."
So how old was this guy?
I mean, he wasn't super young, but he was probably like, I don't know, maybe 30 or something.
So did you utter to him Lehman Brothers?
I go, everyone that I've ever done a mortgage with back in before, I go, is out of business.
Yes.
So anyone could go out of business. Like you said,
I mean,
Lehman.
but to say that we're so big, we're not going to fail. Like Lehman Brothers was massive. Bear Stearns, Countrywide, New Century, and let's get out of the mortgage industry. BlackBerry, have you seen them recently? I mean, I know they still exist, but they don't exist. I mean, they're gone. They were the leader in smartphones around the world. I mean, do you think you're too big?
Yeah, we're like, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Yeah.
But where I didn't want to argue with him or get in fist fights, so I was like, okay, whatever.
General Motors failed. They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Saved by the government, hence Government Motors. Yeah, so, okay.
So just, buyer beware, I suppose. So what's the moral of the story?
The moral of the story is be aware of what's happening. Don't walk around thinking everything is just going to be sunshine and roses. Stop believing other people. Do your own research. Use history.
Diversify your business.
Diversify your business. Look back at history and see what has happened traditionally in our market. Look and see where where is there opportunity, right? Like depending on what you're doing, no matter what your business is, look for the opportunity. Things are changing and things are going to continue to change.
Be willing to pivot.
You have to pivot. Gas is going to be $8 a gallon soon.
Yes.
So, and if you don't think that's going to make the eggs and milk go up, because guess what? They get to the grocery store and they need gas to get there. So, of course, it's going to go up. So,
and be willing to do the crap stuff during the times when you have to. Honestly,
well, you got to, but you definitely need affiliate programs. I mean, if you're an agent and you don't do property management and you don't sign up with us, I don't know what else to say to you, because we're literally giving you money for free, right? Like we're giving you free money. If you're not looking at that and you're so
like short-sighted or tunnel vision.
Yeah, then I mean you can't blame other people for that. So that's I think the whole idea. I can go on forever on this.
Yeah.
It's a hot topic for me.
More to come.
It's more to come. But there's definitely money out there to be made. There's lots of money to be made. You just got to know who's got it and start looking for it.
There is. And sometimes it's volume based. Sometimes you don't make all the money in one deal. You have to have 100 deals. But, it is what it is. And, the good times come, the bad times come. But, the goal is to survive.
Correct.
Sometimes.
Well,
Sometimes the only goal is to just
smart,
stay afloat.
If you're smart, you'll make this down market a good time. And that's what we're going to do. So, and hopefully we get other agents to come along for the ride. So,
Bye.
All right, cool. See you guys later. See you next week. We're out.
Hey guys, this is Damien. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed listening to us ramble about real estate and property management. Don't forget to check out all our social media and visit our website for wholesale property management. You can find the link in the bio. If you have topics, questions, or crazy situations you want us to talk about, send us a message. See you on the next episode of ModTalk.